Hey guys, it's TCU. Today I'm going to be making what will hopefully be a somewhat short video critiquing Dream's response to the cheating allegations, and I have got to be honest, there is a lot of room for critique with how he handled this in general. Some of his tweets sounded very much like Donald Trump tweets. You really cannot make this shit up.
Having a 16F run be called a fake run by the fake media due to lucklicious BS. Just to say, this video was made by a head moderator without consulting me in any way whatsoever. So sad. I'll make a video response soon. Not very happy with the unfair treatment and bias.
Now, listen. I know most people don't have a million years at their disposal, though I'm sure if they did, they would absolutely love to hear my voice, because it's the voice of God, and being comparable to the second coming of Christ, I'm basically better than all of you. But, alas, I am aware of your time constraints, and so I will try to keep a balance between being concise and being informative. So, without further ado, let us begin.
That's a joke. That's a joke. A professor with a PhD that graduated from Harvard that's actually a practicing astrophysicist that is an expert in statistics and astrostatistics. After reaching out to this expert, he insisted that if he was going to do this analysis, that I must agree to release his findings regardless of if they made me look good or they made me look bad. Knowing that I'm innocent, I agreed. The mod team is a group of respectable people, but they're also young and a group of volunteers, so it's hard to fault them for making mistakes when compared to a full-time professional with a specific expertise in a field like this.
I feel like Dream has dissociative identity disorder because he did not say they were respectable people when he was ranting on Twitter, Discord, and God knows where else. But even taking his statement in a vacuum, you can already see how he intends to discredit the moderation team for Minecraft speedruns. He's laid the groundwork by chipping away at their age and the fact they volunteer out of passion for the sport. And yes, I did just call speedrunning a sport. Let the arguments ensue in the comments.
First of all, the math was off by at least 7.4998 trillion. And the original number was 7.5 trillion. And like I mentioned earlier, this is a huge number. So it's also a huge number to be off by. On the screen right now is a representation of how far they were off by. Again, I'm sure the mods did their best, but when talking about someone's character and their image, making mistakes as big as this can be really damaging.
And again, he is trying to paint a narrative. But to continue with critiquing the video from Dream, I feel it's important to address some of the background information in regards to who he commissioned. And then we can move on to the mathematics shown in the report he has linked in the video description. I feel this is important because Dream himself didn't actually include any of the mathematics his expert used in the video, so it is much harder to argue against what he is saying when we don't actually see the numbers being used. Some of my critiques here will also apply to the video itself, as he mentions some snippets of the expert report in his response video here and there, and his video itself solely relies on both his characterization of the mod team's bias and his expert's report, which has quite a few amateur mistakes that make me question whether or not the company he used, Photo Excitation, can be trusted at all for anything. Speaking of, the site was last used in 2013 before it went unused and was then bought in March of this year, which at the time of recording is 2020 still. Another thing that looks super bad for Dream, in a Reddit thread Dream says he never hired the expert from the consulting site, only that he was a member of one. Well, it is clearly stated inside the document written by Photo Excitation that they were indeed commissioned by Dream. He did hire them. So already Dream is being very misleading for what is no apparent reason. It doesn't matter how he came to contact this person to review the statistics. What matters in his statement is money was indeed exchanged, which Dream denied for again seemingly no gain on his part, which does not make a lick of sense and only makes me distrust anything Dream has to say, because how could I trust anything he says if he lied about something this small that is basically a non-issue in any other circumstance in my eyes? Furthermore, Photo Excitation only has 28 followers on Twitter, with their first tweet coming from May 20th of this year. The website itself for Photo Excitation only has one blog post, which was written on the 21st of March. It has just over 6,000 confirmed views as of December 26th, with only a few hundred upon the initial unveiling of the report in Dream's response video. The company is small, unknown, and unproven, yet Dream decided to use them. According to Dream's story, the expert asked him to use that company, but with how shady the company appears to be at first glance, and the glaring errors with the report itself, it seems clear a third party who didn't have any problem with having his identity made public would have been better. To the actual math now, though. The supposed expert Dream had commissioned decided that the mods were not nearly as precise as they could have been, as he saw that the barters with piglins will always stop after you get 12 ender pearls, which in his eyes he saw as a potential hidden bias in the statistics that make the binomial distribution model a terrible one to use, because the last event of the piglin barter is not independent of the previous events. The issue with his overcompensation here comes down to the very nature of probability. Yes, there is a chance he will stop early, thus altering the apparent experimental probability because of all the unused outcomes. But there is also a chance he will continue to barter as the negative outcomes, not getting a successful trade or ender pearl, exist as well in the data tables. Because of this, the apparent experimental probability over time would still be accurately represented by a model of binomial distribution, as each event is still technically independent. So the Minecraft speedrun team got this correct. The more barters you do, the more similar the experimental probability becomes to the theoretical probability outlined in Minecraft's data tables, which are currently known. Even with that, the original report from the Minecraft speedrun team already accounted for the possibility of barters stopping after each and every event. As stated by a statistician on r/statistics named MFP-, you cannot get any more precise than that. So his assumed well-intentioned attempt to compensate for possible bias had no need whatsoever. Furthermore, when calculating the odds, the hired expert decided to include 5 previous 1.16 speedruns, which Dream did before going on a break from speedrunning. This is very misleading because the Minecraft speedrun team already made it clear they did not believe he cheated on those 5 streams in particular, and believed them to reflect normal Minecraft probabilities. Hence why they calculated the odds only for the 6 streams after he returned from his break, because those 6 were the only streams which raised red flags, and to include the previous 5 would skew the data they wished to gather out of the investigation, which again was only into those 6 streams. A good quote to summarize the sample bias argument Dream is trying to use in a nutshell: Usain Bolt isn't that fast. In fact, for at least 8 hours a day he doesn't move at all. Why aren't people taking that into account when they calculate his speed? Even with these overcompensations in mind, the odds in Dream's favor are still ridiculously low, coming down to 1 in 100 million. One explanation the expert had for Dream's luck was included in the video, so I will just let Dream explain this one.
Quote, if you ask, what is the probability that anyone playing Minecraft has luck as good as Dream did during these 11 streams, then the odds are very high. Dream's luck can be described not in terms of unusual success in the game, but that out of all of the Minecraft players, it was him who got this lucky, and he got this lucky while live streaming. But remember, this could not be counted against him, because he was investigated precisely because he got very lucky.
Okay, that is quite a bit to unpack, but I'll try to distill it down to something a 2-year-old can understand. The expert is misapplying some logic here. Yes, it is true that out of everyone who buys a lottery ticket, one person will win because millions are buying lottery tickets, so even though the odds are low, there's a chance you could be the lucky guy. The problem is, it's a false comparison. Dream got lucky 6 consecutive streams in a row, as in, he seemed to play with significantly higher odds 6 streams in a row. In the lottery comparison, it's not like, oh, I beat the odds, I won the lottery once. No, it is like one individual winning the lottery 6 times in a row without any other lottery results in between. The more barters he did, the less his experimental probabilities seemed to reflect existing Minecraft data tables. The probability of getting an ender pearl from a piglin trade remains the exact same from person to person. Probability itself does not change. Experimental probability with a large enough sample size, such as Dream's 6 streams, that's a tongue twister and a half, should look very similar to the theoretical probability. 1 in a billion events happen every single day because there are billions of different places for them to occur in. As for this luck not being counted against him because he was investigated for being lucky, it can be, and will be all things considered. It wasn't started because it was lucky, it was started because he was abnormally lucky, as in the data given from his large sample size did not appear to match Minecraft data tables or be in any way similar, hence why they were deemed suspicious. His previous 1.16 streams seemed to have normal Minecraft probabilities, which is why they were never included.
Another thing that's been used against me is that when comparing this lucky streak to Illumina or another popular runner, my streak of runs looks much luckier than, say, a streak of lucky runs they had. Again, here's another quote from the document from the expert. Quote, "The low probability of Dream's runs and that Dream performed much better than other speedrunners should not be considered as independent pieces of evidence. They both indicate the same thing. Any lucky speedrunner chosen because they look lucky will look lucky when compared to other speedrunners."
No, Dream, you keep getting this wrong. In the graph you showed, there was a runner who looked luckier than other runners but wasn't under investigation. Why? Because it was well within the margin of error that can be present in statistics. Your luck was far outside the margin of error and ventured straight into absurdity. That is why you were investigated. Not simply because you looked lucky compared to other runners, but because the luck they had observed looked abnormal and absurd. It wasn't a bias against you specifically that explains why they didn't investigate other lucky runners. It was the sheer absurdity of your luck compared to known probabilities. Dude, of course the gold block pattern in the background is still going. You slowed down the source video. I don't understand why you seemingly doubled down on flawed logical reasoning here.
Another thing that the mods got wrong were a few of the bias corrections. The mods claimed that they biased everything in my favor, and that the number they came up with was the lowest possible probability in my favor. One thing that they mentioned in their investigation is that they came up with the number 10 for the number of potential targets for a cheater to change. They also said that this was a generous exaggeration, as they could only think of a few. This confused me, so I asked them for a list. When I asked for the list of the 10 that they were referring to, they were unable to provide one, and they inferred that it was arbitrarily chosen.
Okay, so let me get this straight. They said they could collectively only think of a few targets for you to change, but they chose the number 10 knowing there was probably some things they didn't think of as an attempt to be reasonable and give you the benefit of the doubt. And you were confused and decided to ask them for a direct list of these 10 things, when they said they couldn't actually think of 10 things, they could only think of a few. Dream, you cannot possibly be missing your mistake here. What the actual fuck? And you included that in the video?
Sweet merciful Buddha, what the fuck?
I don't doubt that you came up with a list of 37 targets you could have changed as a cheater, but you can't really blame the moderation team for being unable to list the 10 targets when they said themselves they can only think of a few, and came up with the number 10 as an attempt at being realistic knowing they likely missed some. They put in an effort clearly, so why did you frame it as though it was a fault that they couldn't list the 10 you asked them to, knowing they said themselves they could only think of a few being, 3, maybe 4.
On top of everything I've said so far, numbers can be really misleading. As an example, when you create a Minecraft world, that world has a random number created with it, the seed. That random number determines how your Minecraft world looks. That means that each different Minecraft world you've created had a 1 in 281 trillion chance of being that world. It gets even crazier when you start to combine the odds together. If you created 2 Minecraft worlds, the odds of you getting the first world and then the second world are so low that you cannot even calculate them on 99% of calculators. Yet,
congratulations, Dream. You just learned why Minecraft's RNG works so well, and why you never get the same world twice without manually putting in the same exact seed. But I do appreciate you when talking about numbers being misleading. You frame the numbers in a misleading way to make your point. That numbers can be used in misleading ways, which, granted, while being a good point ordinarily, doesn't answer the problem the Minecraft speedrun team attempted to solve. Because again, you got absurd luck 6 streams in a row. It wasn't a matter of, I got this specific circumstance once and never again. It was, I got this specific circumstance in several different worlds 6 streams in a row. It's funny how the difference in framing can change your perspective, which Dream appears to be well aware of in this instance.
he says this.
We asked Dream for his mods folder specifically so we could check for any modification, but he was unable to provide any evidence since he says he deletes the contents of his mods folder pretty regularly.
That obviously makes me seem very suspicious, except for the fact that I didn't ever say that. I provided the mods with every file they ever asked for, and I never said that I regularly delete the contents of my mod folder.
This is a half-truth, and he also did not provide the moderation staff with everything they ever asked for. The fact he's twisting the truth here, and with how he twisted it earlier, makes his characterization of a disorganized investigation very difficult to believe. One look at the original document that was referenced in Geosquare's video seems to scream otherwise. He also said he never said he deleted his mods folder regularly, which, while true, was otherwise implied in the statement that he regularly changes his mods folder, and he deleted the 1.16 mods folder run after the investigation was announced, because according to him he was raging and considering quitting speedrunning Minecraft. Which, again, he considered that over an investigation, by the way. Yeah, totally the actions of an innocent man. I see no problem here.
Before going into more specific subjects is to please not send hate to anyone involved. I already apologized on Twitter because I had said some rude things to the mods after the video was released, and I really don't want to send hate to anybody. I responded incredibly immaturely at first because I was angry, and I really do regret my response.
Biggest understatement of the year, and it's fucking 2020 of all years.
But I would think that the average person being falsely publicly accused might react in a similar way. I don't know. I'm very competitive, so being called a cheater just really set me off at first.
You copied the "I've been caught cheating" playbook word for word, and you think this is how an innocent party would respond. So many cheaters have been caught in many different games over the years, from Doom to GoldenEye, and Super Mario Bros. 2 to Mario 64. Don't forget Billy Mitchell and Todd Rogers caught cheating in Donkey Kong and Dragster, respectively. All of them have responded with a similar amount of hostility, accusations of jealousy, and slews of insults thrown at the accusers. I don't think "I'm just a very competitive person" really covers your behavior here, Dream.
Now that that's out of the way, in the video, they used the logs that I mentioned before to show that I had Fabric API loaded, but they didn't mention that it showed that nothing else was loaded. They also alluded to the fact that I'm suspicious because I used Fabric, a mod loader. But Fabric is used by more than half of all of the top runners on the leaderboard. And actually, I would have much preferred using Optifine, where you can't use mods. And I did, until they banned Optifine from speedruns and told people to use Fabric instead. So I switched to Fabric because I had to, and then I was called suspicious because of it.
Here he is misrepresenting what was said again. He was not called suspicious because he had been using Fabric. He was called suspicious because he had enabled Fabric API, something which is not enabled as a dependency for any of the Fabric mods he would have used in a speedrun, such as Sodium. Using Fabric was not the suspicious thing. That is entirely normal for speedrunning. The suspicious thing was Fabric API. I find it especially interesting that you had to strawman the argument against you to prove yourself innocent. You claimed they asked you whether you thought all Fabric mods depended upon Fabric API, including Sodium, but did not specify whether you answered yes or no to that question, leading me to believe you had answered no, you did not think that. The reason I think this is because had he answered yes, his point would have been bolstered even further and he would not have omitted that fact in his response video. He included that he asked, but suspiciously omitted what his answer had been, even though that would have proved his point further.
Geosquare said in the video that Fabric API was a mod creation tool.
The Fabric API, a mod creation tool.
Which is just extremely misleading. It's a required mod for almost every single mod in Fabric. So much so that a lot of people think that you need it for every mod, and I was actually asked by the mods if I thought that. But they didn't mention that in the video. And yet again, they use this to make me look suspicious. He also uses the logs and shows them on screen as proof that I had Fabric API loaded. But again, he doesn't mention that it doesn't show any other mods loaded. And that's called cherry picking. Using the facts that support your claim as evidence, but ignoring any facts that go against your...
Nice projecting. See, the problem with pesky things like logs is they are stored locally and can be easily altered. There is a very high possibility that you removed any mention of your data pack from the logs. And before some wise ass in the comments decides to say, "But doesn't that just change the last modified date, making them look even more sus?" I'm going to show you, right now, just how easy it is to change things like the last modified date you see in the attributes even after you modify it, to match the rest of the files in a given folder. Just watch. before you decide to say, "But sir, that's too complicated," do you mean to tell me that a software engineer such as Dream is not very knowledgeable on tech to the point where he doesn't know how to do a Google search? Hell, there are GUI programs out there that do the exact same thing the set item property command in PowerShell does. If Dream was too lazy to type it out himself, he could easily find one of those programs with Google.
If they were being completely fair, he should have presented the fact that this log showed that there was no other mods, but it would weaken their argument, so they didn't mention it. And this is a recurring theme throughout the video. He says a lot of things that might be partially true, but says them in a very misleading way that would make a reasonable person think that I look guilty.
Projecting again, presents evidence in a very misleading fashion to support one particular viewpoint. Geosquare's video is a summary of the facts gathered during the investigation, with a layman's explanation of probability. The full scope of that, by the way, is within the paper they published if anyone would like to read it. Dream's video had very little as far as probability goes, just one calculation, one that went unexplained in the actual video, which depended upon false pretenses, those being that the previous 5 streams should have been counted along the 6, and an overcompensation with barter stopping. And keep in mind, with those false pretenses and mistakes, the supposed expert was still only able to conclude that Dream's odds of getting that lucky were 1 in 100 million, which is still exceptionally low odds.
I don't blame them that much because they're a team of volunteers, mostly consisted of young people, and everybody is bound to make mistakes, especially when you're younger, including me. But when you're calling into question someone's character, you really have to be careful what you say.
Okay, so, I'm so sorry, I appear to need to cough something out. I think I have a frog in my throat. Hypocrite. Okay, so that's the end of what actually has substance for his response video. The rest of it is talking about possible bias against him from the moderation team, which has no real bearing on the investigation considering they did all they could. Read the paper yourself if you don't believe me. He got, one of the things he said as an example of possible bias was he got banned from the Bedrock Edition speedrunning section for some reason. So anyway, if you want to view it, the last clip I showed ended at 17 minutes and 7 seconds, so you could just watch the video from there if you would like, or just watch the entire thing just to see if I put it in a misleading fashion. You know, just to confirm that I'm not being totally biased against him, even though I totally am. So, do I think Dream cheated? Well, my position was made very clear throughout the entire video. If you couldn't figure out what side I'm on, I am deeply sorry for your loss. But anyways, in conclusion, Dream bad, Technoblade good, please subscribe, don't kill me.
Is that what you want?